You are watching GMODISM, my ladies and gentlemen. You're back here for another tutorial, or if it's your first tutorial, very welcome to the channel. That's some salute shooting for you. Anyways, I have an old video of how to build a multi-barrel fast-fire APS turret, and people are kind of liking that tutorial still. They're watching it. The issue is it's kind of old, so I want to make a tutorial that's not old. And we're gonna build, as I say, multi-barrel fast-fire APS cannons. So let's get into it. We're gonna check out the both way of doing multi-barrel. You have the multi-barrel where you have basically parted up the barrel into several ones like this. And you have the multi-barrel where you have basically separate guns. And if we go into here, and you can just see a little bit what we're dealing with. When we're parting up the barrel like this, we basically have one gun technically. And when we're building a multi-barrel system like this, we are technically having two separate guns in the same turret. So these systems, we can see when we highlight this one, they are actually not connected to each other. And that's kind of the trick a little bit quickly. Here you can see they are even separated by an armor banner, or barrier. So it's even easier to kind of see that. Anyways, let's get started. First, we're going to select what size of turret we're going to build. So we're going to build a smaller turret. I'm thinking perhaps a D7. A diameter 7 turret, yeah. If you don't want to use my build platform, you can get the sizes here for 7 to 17. In any case, we should be getting a 1-axis turret. You can actually have a 2-axis turret if you want to have a really small gun. But generally, you want to use 1-axis turrets, and if you're building a really big turret, it can be smart to have a 5 meter or 3 meter one. The thing is that the larger ones, they are kind of spinning a little bit faster, if that's something you would need. Right, so here we have this, and inside is white area where we should build our turret. Nothing should stick out of this little white barrier, right? So this green barrier represents the armor for the turret well that will be on the main construct. And these red ones, nothing can be here, right? So when we're building on top of the turret, so you can see if we're building here, if I click the build button on the platform here, and I like add blocks, I won't actually build on the turret. You can see, you may think you're building on the turret, but when you're taking control here, you see you don't. So you need to make sure that when you click the build key, you aim on the turret, like that. And now we build on the turret. Just a little quick tip there. So, the really complex or annoying little issue we have when we're building turrets is that we need to make them EMP insulated. And to make them EMP insulated, we need to think a little bit extra. So we go to AI local weapon controller and all-in-one local weapon controller. And then we can add our little local weapon controller. We're going to add it here. We're also going to add an auxiliary one. We're going to add an extra one, and we're going to have it here. It's going to be a backup. And to have some EMP surge protection, we're going to implement one in the base here. So if an EMP surge goes on the turret, it will go this way and to that, so that your weapon controller won't be hurt. And if it comes from the main construct and zoops up here, it will go to this one and not kill that one. However, if you get hit another time, this will die, and that's why we have one insulated one. This one that is insulated, we are going to go to rubber. So it needs to be protected from rubber on all sides. So here it's going to be backwards. So we're going to add one here as well, because here we have some armor. And on the bottom side, we don't need to have anything because it's empty space. It won't be able to jump from the main construct to the turret, except via the turret access. So this is fine to leave it open at the bottom here. But this is now completely protected. We're going to make sure this one has the maximum priority. And we can set up the channels a little bit later. I usually set up the backup local weapon controller to another computer. Because if we set it to another channel, so for example, this thing has a main AI and a secondary AI. But check my AI tutorials for that if you want to have several targeting computers. But if you already know how to do that, set one up as channel 2. Because if your main AI gets hit, you can still kind of survive with your secondary AI if all your turrets, secondary all-in-one local weapon controllers, your LVCs, are connected up to the second AI instead. I hope I didn't confuse you too much. I want to bring in approximately a good amount, approximate good amount of information, not too much, not too little, but whatever, you can tell me in the comments. So this white little area is where we can build. So we should be fleshing out the turret a little bit here. So here we can see we actually have a 5x5. I'm actually going to go ahead and show you some turret armoring here. This, the front side, is going to be the heaviest. So we're going to hit it with a 5x5 meter duct here in the front. So we are well protected from that. And we can add some extra blocks there as well. So your turret will, of course, because it's facing the enemy, get most of its fire hit in the face of it. So that's why it's smart to armor. That's why it's kind of important to armor the turret in the front more than the sides. But it's good to armor it from the sides a little bit too. And you might be wondering, why do we even have an extra thing? Well, this one is only protected by like 1 meter of rubber here. So that's why it's a smart idea to have an extra weapon controller inside of here. Because if a high explosive or fragmentation shell blows up the turret, it's possible that this local weapon controller gets destroyed, right? Then it's good to have a, you know, a really armored one inside. Most people don't opt for explosive and frag and EMP as like main shells. They usually have either of it. So this one is more protected for the EMP users, and this one is more protected for the high explosive frag damage types. But of course, people bring both, so then you'll just have to hope you're lucky. Well, in any case, we are gonna make sure that this is connected up or like attached properly. So you can see we are not putting anything. I can't put this here because then we're building over this little block we cannot build over. So we can use it like that. And then we can have like that and like that. So we have a pretty sturdy base here of the turret to make it a little bit, well, survive a little bit better. We don't necessarily need to fill in the insides here. We could skimp on the armor a little bit and just make the bottom layers protected. So yeah, we can actually add that later. We can just add vertical just vertical 4 meter beams. But when we're building the turrets, it's easier if we can see inside of it. So I guess we should just add blocks here, there, and there. So we kind of have an area where we can build on. In any case, so now we should actually be building the weapon system. And I told you can have multiple barrels per gun, basically. And you can also have separate guns within the same system. So you might wonder, which is it we are going to do? We're going to do both in the same turret to be extra pedagogical. Now we kind of need to select how high we want this. So yeah, we're just going to activate the little thing here so we can do a little bit of measuring. When you're building hull, you usually are building the hull using vertical beams like this. So it's usually in increments of 4 plus 1, since you usually have one layer of deck too. So 13 could be a good elevation, or perhaps 9. I think we're gonna go with 9. We're gonna have a 9 tall turret. Yes, so I'm gonna input that. We're just gonna write in 9 here. And then we can remove these. Make sure we build on the turret. So this is where our barrels can start, right? That's like the earliest point. And we're going to put the barrels at the level where they can start, so we can have a pretty low profile turret if we want to. And we are going to make them pretty narrow like this. So we're gonna have a 1 meter in between. So yeah, that's where we're gonna have it. Now we are at layer 9, and the turret, the elevation of the turret, I mean, is basically the amount of turret that needs to be below deck, because that will of course be at the shape of the turret well, and the rest of the turret is gonna stick up, and it's gonna be pretty low profile. Now you have some different mantlets you can choose from, and usually the AA mantlet or elevation mantlet 2 meter is the best thing to use. We are going to make our turret anti-air capable, so we're going to have the AA mantlet so we can have a wide range of firing arcs. So now that we kind of know the approximate size of the turret blocks interior here, we can start building on the gun system itself. And what you should always understand when you're building multiple gun systems like this, you need to make sure they don't connect with each other, because when you save the turret and load it in again, even if it works, like if you accidentally connect them up like this, when you spawn it again, one gun will work and one will not work. So you have to make sure they are not connected in any way. And how do we do this? Well, we can use blocks that are not having connection points to all the sides. Now you can see here, I added a gauge increaser right behind it instead. So now we get 120 millimeters as max. Thing is, we're going to go in here and I'm going to just put on a little piece of barrel to showcase. But we're going to go in here and we're going to separate them to make them 2 barrel. And when we do that, you can see that the gauge halved. So they're kind of sharing these gauge increasers. So you need to add as many so you get the gauge that you want. And remember that different gauges have different sounds. I actually have a video that goes through all of the APS sounds if you are interested, and that's an important metric for you. But when we're doing fast fire turrets, you generally can't have very high gauges, because the higher gauge you have, the slower firing they will be, and they will not be very, very efficient if you do them very high gauge. So this turret, we don't need any gauge increasers on this, because we are actually going to have it gauge 50. But if we had, say, 6 barrels, we would need to have a couple of gauge increasers to be able to have that caliber for each barrel. But we're only gonna do 2 barrels, and we don't want it to spin. We want them to, yes, we can leave the settings as they are here. And again, gauge increasers not needed, but we can use the coolers, and we can use the coolers that are straight so they don't connect to each other when we drag them down here. Now, the cool thing is that if you're gonna have gauge increasers, they have a slightly higher health. It's not really much, but it's slightly higher. So if you can put them right behind the firing pieces, maybe those extra health points matter. And to drag them down to the turret, we can use the turns here, the cooling vents like that. we can aim in this direction and click N to enter symmetry plane mode. Now, before we go any further here, we should be going to this firing piece, which is inside of here, and we're gonna hit Ctrl C. We're gonna go over to this one and paste Ctrl V. So the settings are pasted here, so we have the same, the proper type of gun. Now you can see we have 30 millimeters. So I'm sorry, I messed up. We actually need a gauge increaser, 1 gauge increaser per side here to get 50 millimeter shells. 100 millimeter is great for 2 meter autoloaders. 50 millimeters is great for 1 meter autoloaders. To make a fast firing gun, having the smaller autoloaders is better. You can have the 1 meter autoloader like this. Then they can actually have ammunition on 5 sides. And the 1 meter autoloader is great, and it can offer you sustained fire. But you must use the belt-fed autoloaders if you want to get a really high rate of fire. You can't get away with using the regular autoloaders to have a very high rate of fire in a reasonable amount of space. But the issue with the belt-fed autoloaders is that they can't use ejection ammo ejectors and ejection defuses. So when you're building with belt-fed autoloaders, which is your to-go autoloader for building fast-firing guns, you need to make sure that either your turret is armored, like we're doing here, because otherwise it may chain react. And it can also be a smart idea to not fire frag shells at this speed. When we're building fast-firing guns, it's generally better to use kinetic shells, that is armor-piercing, sabot rounds or heavy head rounds, than to use the chemical rounds. But you can do whatever you want. But if you end up using the 1 meter autoloader with frag, you should probably build an ejector on it too. But when we're building really fast firing guns, my recommendation is belt-fed autoloaders. They have a much higher firing speed. You can get really dense firepower from this. Now, they have a little bit of a drawback, and that is that they need to load fully before being able to fire again. So when they are loading, you're actually having a downtime. Now, you have 2 options to deal with this. One option is to basically build a really long magazine. And then you can like get away with having 1 ammo intake. The reload will basically be forever, but if you do really long mags like this, you can fire for a long time, and when it's out, but you can fire for a long time, and then you can reload when you're, I don't know, in peaceful situations. And that's also a pretty cost-effective way of dealing it, since a ammo clip costs 160 materials and a belt-fed costs 600 material per autoloader. But the amount of belt-fed autoloaders is actually what's kind of deciding the firing speed. And we really want to max out on firing speed in this video. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a short magazine set up. So we're gonna be able to reload fast and get back to combat very fast as well. Now, if you have only 1 ammo intake on it, the reload time will be kind of long. So you can have more ammo intakes. And you can actually have like a lot of ammo intakes to make the reload time really fast. But you can be a little bit sensible about it, and what I usually like to do is having 1 on each side of the autoloader and 1 on each side of the ammo clip, and you have a reasonably fast reload time. Now, you are going to click, is it the control? No? I don't even like know the shortcuts anymore. because I have set up my shortcuts. Oh no, that's permabuild. It's Alt. No. It's Shift Control. No. That's. Oh, prefab is Control P. Right. I just set it up to my go backwards, in browsing, backwards key. And on the go forwards key, I have the prefab menu, or the subobject menu on the go forwards. And I have the prefab menu on the go backwards on my mouse button. You use, like when you're building it from the depth, you use these commands so often. I really recommend you to set up a faster shortcut, like your mouse buttons, forward and backward browsing buttons, for example. Well, Control P, then go into your prefab menu and height too high, like that. Perfect. So now you can kind of see I have managed to create a space that's large enough to copy this. So I'm gonna click left click to copy this, and I'm gonna hover over this and click right click to remove it. Now, what we're gonna do here is that we are going to set up this little gun, and we are going to make sure that they fit inside of here. They do. So we're gonna build a tower of these prefabs here, like that, until about 1 meter below. So you can armor up to this point and make sure that you don't get down here. If you have scary ammo loaded in this thing, like if they get hit, the turret will just go up in flames or in a big explosion. I'm going to show you that later, by the way. But this is kind of how we can set it up, and then you can go and add a cooler to it. Very nice. Now, you do have a little issue when you are doing this, and that is that we don't have any ammo. So there are different ways you can use ammo constructs on the like vehicle that are built in. That's absolutely fine. You can also add ammo controllers on the turret. Now, adding ammo controllers on your turret actually gives you a weak point. It's not really good, but it's really easy to see what you are doing, right, when you're having an ammo controller on the. So it can be a good idea just for showing you purposes, basically, that to add it on here. But it can also be a smart idea to never use these built in, because if this gets shot, they will kind of load faulty shells onto the gun later on, so that's not great. But the really smart thing, if you actually build an ammo customizer and stick it in your turret, of course we're going to move it inside here, but if you do this, the turret will be preloaded with the optimal shell every time you load a turret. And I'm really lazy, so I usually build my APS ammo controllers on each of the turrets anyways. So that you can do what you want with, but I'm gonna build for building this into the turret. Like that. Very nice. You can have max 20 modules, and if we're gonna do kinetic APS, 20 is about what we need, but we can change the size of this later to test different ammo types. But I'm just gonna go into this and set up, or if you set it up on the construct, you can do that as well. Doesn't matter really. But if you build it, if you actually build it with an ammo controller on the turret, as said, the turret will come preloaded with the optimal shell every time. In any case, I'm gonna show you a basic kinetic shell. We're gonna have a sabot head. We're gonna have a solid warhead body. And we can have a tracer. Yep, that will be it. Now you can see that the casing and length is gonna be a little bit large here. So we can make it a little bit smaller. No, it's set to, okay, right. It's set to 60 millimeters, that's wrong. Set it to 50 millimeter, exactly. Now you can see 20 modules at 50 millimeter shells. 50 millimeters is really small in from the depth for some funny reason, but yeah. And you can see that this shell plus casing is now just below 1 meter in total length. That means they will fit in these autoloaders. By the way, let me actually get that. Wait. Yeah, okay, this video is sponsored by me, I guess. Look at this bottle. I made a ammo-looking bottle for the army of GMODISM. This is 67 millimeters. So 67, 50 millimeters. Just remove a little bit and you have 50 millimeters. That's how large a 50 millimeter round would be. This is, as said, a 67 millimeter round, but whatever. There you know. If you want to support the channel, links in description. Yeah, but my point being that we're firing 50 millimeter shells or like 60 millimeter shells. Like it's... We call this type of gun a sandblaster, by the way, because it's so tiny and it doesn't deal a lot of damage. And imagine that in real life, the size of these shells are absolutely insane. So that's what we're doing with. Right, we're gonna click assign. So I go into the ammo intake and I click Q and I click assign on this sabot head we created. You can name it something to, we can name it sand or whatever. So you can easily see it here, whatever, assign whatever. Assign to all intakes. So when you click assign to all intakes, it only assigns it to all intakes for this gun. Remember that this is technically another gun. So assign whatever here and to all intakes. And there you go. Now we're going to go to and see some interesting stats here that were actually explained to us what we need to do here. Here you can see I'm just Control T. So you can see that the autoloader limit for this gun is right now 298 rounds per minute. The ammo intake limit is 1192 RPM. It's good that it's higher because remember, with belt-fed autoloaders, we're gonna have a downtime. And the cooling limit is 51 RPM. We're actually getting a bit of a better cooldown thanks to we use multiple barrels. But that says multi-barrel 1.2 cooling time multiplier, I mean. If you have even more barrels per one, you can see here, you get a 2 times. If you have the max 6 barrels, you have 2x cooling time multiplier. So that's important that you know that. But in any case, 1.2 cooling time multiplier, which is great, but we still need to add a lot of more coolers to make this system even run. So now we need to be a little bit smart. This is a gauge increaser, right? I'm gonna remove this menu here. I'm gonna remove that and I'm gonna place it down here and I'm gonna take the cooling vent here. So here we have a gauge increaser, here we have a gauge increaser, and that is because we need to start to branch off stuff here. So for example, there are 2 ways of dealing with this situation, by the way. To make the turret survive a little bit better, the best thing you can add is to add a layer of armor between the guns so that they are completely separated. Thus, if one blows up, they won't chain react. Now, you can do that, and that's a good idea, but I want to be a little bit more tight here with my coolers. So we're gonna go to this gun and we are gonna add a cooler here on the side so we can branch it off here. And here we have, well, actually we're gonna do like that. Right. So we have the cooling vent here and here we have the cooling vent there, which means that we can do a cooling splitter down here. And that means we can build a tower downwards here and build a tower downwards here. And using the straight cooling units, going straight downwards like this, you can see we are closing in on a more acceptable cooling limit. If it's a bit hard to see here, click the P button and you'll shrink the blocks. Like that. And this other gun, we can build a tower downwards like that. So now we basically go down to the bottom of the turret like that with our coolers. And in front of this layer here, we can't build anything. So it's gonna be a bit crammed. It's always very crammed when you build turrets, by the way. We have to be a little bit more creative. We need some more cooling towers. And you can see we have a free layer to use here and a free stack basically to use there. And here we have an area as well, which we can use. Now, we're going to be a bit smarter. We're going to move this gauge increaser. Clicking R, you can select a block. We're going to put it here instead. And we are going to get the most used cooler of them all. The 5-way split gauge cooler. So you can kind of make sure that the back is aimed towards whatever it should not connect to. And we can add one. We can actually add one on top of here instead. So you can see it's not connecting there. And we're going to turn it with the back to that side. So we can replace this and this. And then we get a load of more connection points. Make sure where the back is located like that. Turn it. And we can then build around here. Perfect. And now you can see I accidentally placed this wrong, since this should connect to this side, right? So the backwards can actually be upwards like that. Very good. And now we have a cooling. This one's cooling limit is 236 RPM, which is close to the autoloader limit. So the autoloader limit and the cooling limit should be the same. The cooling limit can be a tiny bit higher than the autoloader limit, but you know, it's not important that it is. The autoloader limit should not be higher than the cooling limit. That much we can say. Right, so we should then be making sure we don't accidentally connect anything up like this, like we did for the previous one, and like that. And we can even continue on top of here. Here we have a cooler, so we can actually provide some more connection points with putting this one there instead. Nice. And this is the gauge increaser, so we can connect that up. Okay, good. Like that. Now the cooling limit is... look like that. Look at that. Now we actually shown you what happens if you accidentally connect up stuff. That's very good that I accidentally showed you that. It's really hard to not accidentally do this. Now you can see that this tower going down here is connecting up to both of these belt-fed autoloader stacks. Yeah, that's right. That's right. They connect to each other, but they also connect to coolers. So this tower is connecting up both of the belt feds. This tower in the middle, it doesn't work. Right. So in the middle here, we can't actually have a stack of coolers, because that will accidentally connect to the autoloaders, and as I did tell you, mess up the entire turret after saving. Right, that was a little bit of a mistake, but it shows you even with like 1,000 hours in the game, you make mistakes. Yeah, and that's why it's important to remember the connection points. So here in the middle, we can't have a cooling vent. We'll need to have it here instead. And as you can see, we don't have connections to this side, so we can build a tower straight downwards here. Just like that. And we can just start the light. Okay. Fortunately, they will not connect up to the ammo intakes, only to the autoloaders. So it's only this stack in the middle that we need to leave empty. Right, so now we have a 289.4 RPM cooling limit for both of them. If you want to slightly boost the cooling, you have a bore evacuator. So now you can see we could get up from 289 to 293. A little bit better, but the bore evacuator basically has no downsides because you don't need to put it in the beginning of the firing piece anymore. You can put it at the end as well. But anyways, let us see if we add a single extra cooler. We get a cooling limit here, making us not actually needing the bore evacuator at all. Okay, got it. So we only need one cooler per side more, which we're gonna add. And just add one at the top, maybe one here and one somewhere. Right, so I see the perfect place to add them. It's a bit finicky, so I'm not sure I recommend this. But if you can see there, we can turn that one in this direction. Good, then we'll get the connection point 2 there. And if we use this thing, we can connect it to the side like that. It will only be able to connect, yes, it will only be able to connect with this system. And if we take and move it like that, it will only connect to this system. Yeah, isn't that great? So now we have a autoloader of 298 RPM. We have an ammo intake limit of 1192, and we've got a cooling limit of just above the autoloader limit, 302 RPM, as it should be for both of the barrels. So it's well, balanced. Anyways, if we basically if we just take control of this system and we can aim it around and fire. Very nice. Now you have a little bit of an annoying thing, and that is that you can hear that they are kind of unsmooth. They shoot all over the place. They are outputting the RPM they say they're outputting, but you have a little bit of an issue here. You need to make it smooth by going in here and setting the RPM. So we have 298. So we're gonna set the max fire rate at 298. And it is 0.2 actually, but if you just undershoot the RPM a tiny little bit, 289 was it not? Like 289, right? Or what? No, it was 98. I have a very long memory. All right. If you just undershoot it by excluding the decimals there, you get the smooth fire rate. You can see they are alternating fire, which is exactly what you want. Now, we do have one issue on these turrets. They are a little bit inaccurate. They are somewhat accurate, and that's because we added a visible tracer. The other thing you can use except the visible tracer is including stabilizer fin bodies to make it more accurate as well. But there are actually two or more ways, but the way that's not using railgun force to make it stable is basically to make sure you don't have an uncontrolled amount of recoil. So right now we're generating 3,300 recoil per second and only absorbing 63, which makes us look here at the inaccuracy 0.28 from recoil is, yeah, basically most of it. We have basically half a degree of inaccuracy, and if we continue to fire, oh, now they're actually reloading. That's a thing, by the way, you can set in the bell-fed autoloaders. Time before reload. Set it to higher if you don't want it to reload between short pauses, and you can set it to lower if you want it to reload fast also. It doesn't matter, but whatever you want. Apply to all we can do. But yeah, it has now reloaded. It's pretty fast reloading. But if you continue to fire here, we can actually do like this. And you can see that if you look at the stats here, the inaccuracy is actually going down a little bit after we have fired because we're absorbing, and it's going up while firing like this. So, can be a good thing to keep in mind that your inaccuracy will go up whilst you're shooting due to recoil. You can see, yeah, it's mounting up here. Inaccuracy. Look at that. So we're basically half a degree of inaccuracy. Isn't that annoying? And to drag this down, we need recoil absorbers. For fast firing guns, fast scary guns, you need a lot. Here you can see we are having, by just putting this 8-meter slab of recoil absorption on here, we're now having an absorption of 1023, but we're generating 3000. So we basically need 3 of these, and that's even not enough to amount for the recoil you're having. So you can either say, well, what the hell, they cost like 640 per unit. I don't need that much of an accuracy. Well, make sure you slap a visible tracer in here or some stabilizer fin bodies and call it a day, and just understand your gun won't be that accurate. If you need accuracy, which you usually do for sandblasting systems, well, then you just have to find a way to include as much recoil absorbers for the absorption, which is now 2,943 per second, to be more than the recoil generated, which is now 3,348. So that, of course, requires a little bit of Tetris, and yeah, what can we say? What can we say? It's just good old Tetris. You can see this is a great place to stick it in there. We can fit one there, and one is hidden within here. So a third of the recoil is basically almost absorbed. Now you can also think on how you can hide them away in the head of the turret. You can do that too. And if you're using a turret that doesn't need to be very armored, can you basically have recoil absorbers on the side like this? It works, of course, but for this system we're a little bit volatile, so I recommend against it. Before including the final touches of this turret here, it's really time to talk about ammo. Because one way to decrease the recoil is to use less gunpowder. So here you have, well, your shell. You can instead, for example, now we have a really fast shell, and we're dealing a kinetic damage of 3049. What you could do, if you want a kinetic round here, you can add a couple of solid warhead bodies, and as long as we're dealing like at least 40 armor piercing, we are dealing full damage against metal. 48, we're dealing full damage against stacked metal. And now we can have a visible tracer here, make it a little bit more accurate. Fantastic. We are now dealing pretty reasonable decent damage, and the shell is still lower than 1 meter long because, of course, we didn't add any modules. Now we can click refill APS shells using that menu. And if you look at it again, suddenly the recoil is 1,168. So the type of ammo you're putting in there is deciding how much recoil you have as well. Now when you do this, you can see that the autoloaders are slower. So now we have an autoloader limit of 212. And we have a cooling limit of 491. So the shells are not generating as much heat as they did before because they're using less gunpowder. They're not generating as much recoil as they did before because we're using less gunpowder. But the shell part, which is not gunpowder, is kind of longer, which kind of messes it up for the autoloaders. So our total RPM went down when we did this. And this is another reason why you may want to include the ammo on the gun, because if you don't, well, then, you know, it can get annoying if you need to set up a complex exact shell every time. But whatever. This is our new fire rate. Well, shot in spurts, since we didn't adjust. So if we want to shoot smooth for this fire rate, we obviously need to set it up out to the autoloader limit, 212. So we go here and set 212. Unless you want the burst gun, but whatever, that we don't want. So here we have the new fire rate, right? If we would be using this shell. Now, we should also talk a little bit about shell volatility. Here you can see the current shell we're using. Not that much of a gunpowder and stuff like that. You could also decrease the amount of modules as well to make it faster for the autoloaders. And you could increase or decrease the decrease the caliber too. Like if you want to have a really fast firing rate, well, then you should be doing something completely different. We're just gonna click repair on this thing, and I'm just gonna show you what happens. We're gonna disconnect one of the guns just to show you a bit easier. But if you want a really fast fire rate, if you drag this down to 18 millimeters, using this 20 module shell, each rack containing 64, we go into this one. We can set the RPM to max. Whatever do we have now? The autoloader limit is 1300 and the cooling limit is also 1300. It's still balanced, just at a different caliber. And here we can see the results. Whoops. Now I accidentally shot ourselves. Okay, very nice. Do you hear that? Right, we need to set up the max RPM to whatever we have. So let's set it to 1300. You can hear it sound properly. Just undershoot a little bit there. Well, that's the fire rate. Now we have a really fast firing gun, right? And we are also generating recoil, but we're almost absorbing this recoil. Look at that. If we add another one on top of there, we are getting definite. Yeah, we covered the absorption right now. So now you can see we're actually pretty accurate at this distance. I fire here. You can see they're pretty still collected. If you shoot at the ship, they would all be on target still. And here you have, this is basically 2,200 meters away. Yeah, so pretty accurate. The min-maxers will tell you, however, that filling the autoloaders is best, which basically means that if you're gonna have, it basically means that you can't have anything smaller than 50 millimeter. But if you want really high fire rate, well, then you need to go even lower, and you can get a really fast firing rate. I should probably show you the types of damage you can deal against something. So let's not care about the smooth fire rate and just give you the max. Here we have this shell at 18 millimeters. We can just fire and shoot here. You can see it's shooting through, but it's not super scary. So if we increase that to what we had before, 50 millimeters, like that. Refill APS shells, make sure it's loaded. Now we are not, we are, yeah. Now we have a lower RPM, of course, but yeah. Each shot is doing a lot more damage. And it should then be a little bit more effective. Now, I haven't done my Imperial testing video about this kinetic shells yet, so that is to be at a later date. But from my little quick test and experience here, it seems to indeed be correct that filling the autoloader does give us a little bit more damage. Now, again, needs to be tested, but there you go. In any case, a nice thing to know that when you're having a shell that's faster, like that is completely overshooting the armor pierce value and is having a really high speed, it's also that it's much less likely for it to bounce. It's much less likely for it to, well, ricochet, it's called, which is also something to keep in mind. Even if you're having sabot shells, stuff can still ricochet or like bounce off and stuff, but if they're faster, it's a smaller chance. Now, what you can see there is me adding a base bleeder. This is something that actually furthers increase the generated recoil. But let's test this faster shell instead. You can see we're dealing less damage than we did previously at 50mm. But they're really fast and have a high probability of hitting targets far away, thanks to this. Now, it's a little bit inaccurate when we add this type, of course, of base bleeder, because that increases in accuracy. But I wanted to show you something else as well. That's what happens if we do something like a high explosive shell instead. We can do that. We can have a high speed firing high explosive shell. The larger the shell is, when you're dealing with kinetics, you don't generally need very fast shells. It's only to hit the target. The damage you're dealing is how many bodies you can stick in there. So now you can see we have a completely different situation. Autoloader limit of 157. And we have an ammo intake limit and a cooling limit that's much higher than this. Alright then. Now you can see, however, that we're not dealing a lot of damage. Like, of course we're dealing damage, but high explosive shells at this caliber isn't optimal. And you have another bit of an issue too. What happens if we get hit? Well, our magazines will blow up violently, and if you get another hit like that, the entire turret gets ammo racked. And that's not the worst. If you were, for example, to instead have a frag shell here, or let's say, yeah, let's say we have a frag shell here. So you can have a frag head and a fragmentation warhead body. We can have a mix frag and high explosive shell, that's fine. It's gonna be really scary. If the turret gets hit somewhere, it's gonna potentially nuke your entire ship. Yeah. So that's why it's a bit scary to use frag in belt feds without the ejectors and defuses. But that's for another video. Thus, I will recommend using kind of fast kinetic shells for this, as you can clearly see. Sabot head, in my experience, is the best because it doesn't bounce as often. Technically, armor piercing head gives you more damage, but the heavy head is the most damage, but you'll get the least. It kind of bounces. We can test that side by side later. It's gonna be an easy swap. It's not gonna affect the stats a lot. But let's go with the Sabot head. And we should go with a solid warhead body so we can make it kind of fast. We're gonna go and fill 2 head with gunpowder, Sabot head, solid warhead body. One of them is enough, and a tracer is what we're gonna have. A visible tracer. If you want to shoot at things that's underwater, you need to use the super cavitation base. If you want the shells to be a bit faster and deal a bit more damage at cost of accuracy, base bleeder is your friend. Otherwise, visible tracer is a good all around. Right. Alright, so I managed to tuck away the recoil absorbers inside the turret here. And I could even utilize space in between here where we put a column of cooling that accidentally connected up both of the sides to each other. Yeah, I used this space to put some extra recoil absorbers so that we can have a pretty neat and smooth looking system. Now, what I wanted to say to you is that now, when we finally have decided what shell we can use, go down here in the list and select whatever millimeters you're using. And look here, we have some important stats. Barrel length for base inaccuracy, 1 meter. Barrel length for full propellant burn, 7.2 meters. And the base 0.3 degree inaccuracy is, of course, you need it to be a little bit longer for it to be somewhat accurate, but that's kind of the minimum. Otherwise, it will be really inaccurate. But in any case, as you can see here, we have only 4 meters. That means that the shell speed is now 1,280 meters per second. What we need for full propellant burn is 7 meters, 0.2. So if we add another one, we get up to 8 meters, which covers it. Now you can see the shell speed is 1,844 meters per second. So that's kind of the length of barrel you need for your gun to work properly. Good. Now that we have added that, we should add armor. And this I have basically already done. We're going to go to the end key and select a left-right cut for you. Remove the symmetry plane so we can see a little bit better. And now you can see that I have added up armor all around it. Just the basic shape like that. I used a big piece of duct on top, and for the details that we have added, you can see it looks like this. It's just basic shaping generally. It's nothing complex like that. The only thing that might be a little bit new to you is that you might wonder, how have I done these fill in with the shapes here? Well, I took a random block and then I clicked Ctrl-Shift-X and I basically paste that so I can set it, move it about, and do whatever I want with it to make it a part of the design without it actually being a real block. It is thus a fake block. And I added a few of them to smoothen out the lines. Other than that, it's just surrounded by heavy armor and metal in front of it. But I wanted to show you one thing, and that is, you can see I have encapsulated the 2 meter AA mantlet inside of here. It is completely covered in armor. Now, the only space left is this. And here's where we need to be smart. We're going to select the color we need. We're going to select the block. And we're going to hit a block beside the mantlet and beside the barrel. And click Ctrl-Shift-X. So we can cover this up in a way that looks aesthetical. Because this place where the barrel sticks out, it actually needs to be free of anything, free of any block. But here we have a real block above it. And as I said, the AA mantlet is encapsulated. This does in fact not limit the firing angles. So if I take control of the turret and pause the game, you can see clearly here, there is no problem. And this is how you armor your mantlets, just making sure you have one little thing sticking out there. To make it look nice, we're gonna use some mimics on top of it, however. So that I will do right away. We're gonna hover over a block that looks reasonable. We're gonna click Ctrl X. So we're gonna add a new decoration. And we are going to select it to be the shiny metal color. And inside of here, no material override, but inside of here, we're gonna search for mantlet. So here we have AA mantlet, which we're using, but we're gonna use the extra mesh for the AA mantlet. This block looks pretty nice for this application. So that is what I'm going to use. So I'm just gonna take this out and I right click to be able to go through different modes, which we can use to resize this to our desired size and shape. And rotation I don't want to mess with. Let's see here. I think it can be like that. Maybe we should add a little piece of rotation to it actually. Let's see here. So I'm just gonna play around with this until I find a configuration which I'm happy with. Something like that. Then we go back to options, we click copy all and then paste all. And then I can drag one of these to this location. Like that. Then we go back to option and we click copy all and we click paste all. And then we can see the left-right position. We can then put a negative here. And we can then put a negative here. And then we can get the exact mirror there. Yeah, so that's the kind of weird things we do to make it look decent. Now, to make it look more decent in other ways, we'll need to do like this. Add a symmetry plane. There. And then we need to find the mantlet. So here we are at the mantlet. This is the base of the mantlet. And on the mantlet, we will now add a block. I'm gonna go with a silver barrel like this, an AA gun thing. And I'm gonna click Ctrl, Shift, and X while we're on top of the mantlet. When we are doing that, our little thing will actually follow the cannon per se, but it will not retract like we would put it on the barrel. I'm going to show you in a moment, but you can actually use other blocks as well. You can go to fuel engine. Perhaps this is better. We can use a straight pipe. And now we're on the barrel. We want to be on the mantlet. So we're going to add one on the mantlet. Gonna make it exactly on top of that. Maybe drag it forwards a little bit. Copy all, paste all, which means we can get another one to the side here. Excellent. Now we click apply with mirror. And now you can see it's on the other side. So if we fire now, you can see they are not being retracted like that, but they are still following with. And that's because we put them on the mantlet. To make the barrels look nice, we can go on to and select something to paste on top of the barrel. So I like to use steam piping, for example. And now you can see we are on the barrel. And we click Ctrl Shift X, but since it's on the barrel, it will be copied over to the respective barrels, dependent on how many barrels we have. We are going to go to the scaling menu, and we're going to scale it a little bit, make it a little bit larger. And you'll need to scale it quite some bit to make it actually cover the ugly APS standard barrel, like that. And now you have a pretty nice looking barrel, so we can make sure it is exactly where we want it to be. Maybe a little bit like that. Maybe we need to make it a little bit longer. Yeah, kind of like that. And apply with, whoops, not a new decoration, delete decoration there. Apply with mirror here, we should be selecting. Oh, and now we don't have a symmetry plane. We forgot to add it in this session. So when we hover over the barrel, we find where we had it and we click apply with mirror. If you don't know where you put it, you can actually go to this menu and select view only mimics, and then you can clearly see, like, here it's placed and there it's placed. So now the turret is not only functional, it also looks pretty neat. And we can just shoot off a couple of rounds here. Cool. Now we need to make sure that everything is fine and set up. So here on the APS turrets, we have a fire rate of 298. And the cooling is still fine for both of them. Remember that these are different systems and they should have the mirrored stats, but it's easy to forget something, so they might not have mirrored stats, but these two do. But we need to set up the max fire rate 298. I'm gonna select it here. 298, like that. You can do the point 2 here as well if you want to. And now you can just click Ctrl C, go over to this one, Ctrl V, and you have it set up for this one as well. But apparently we were on the barrel, sorry. Firing piece, Ctrl C, Ctrl V. It depends where we are coppering from, which can be a thing that's easy to miss. Beautiful. Now when we shoot, we have a pretty solid fast fire cannon. If we want to now have a statical elevation angle, we can add one. I think 7 degrees usually looks about right, a slight little elevation. But this is an AA gun, so I feel like perhaps a bit higher. 14 degrees should be nice. 14, very nice. And if you remember, we have a specific little elevation for this, which is elevation 9. So that's something I usually do when I'm building turrets. You can see, so I know kind of how and where it fits. Since everything seems to be looking a-okay, we can also go into the local weapon controllers and see if we need to set some type of limitation. This is not really set up to shoot at underwater targets, so things that are a lot underwater we can not care about. We can set it to, you know, maybe if a ship is sinking or if it's sitting a bit low. So let's say -15 should be fine. We want to target fast things, so nothing about that. The range bracket, it's fine to shoot things that are really fine, and we should have a pretty good range. So we can take this, Ctrl C, paste over to the other one, but remember now that we need to set back the channel to this, and of course we need to set the priority to lower here for this one to be secondary. Very nice indeed. Now we should be saving this thing. This little platform costs exactly 2 million, so we know that this turret cost all in all 28,000 materials. Good to know. We can see that later though, so we are going to, I think this is Ctrl O, yes it is, and we're gonna save what we're building on. So now we need to make up a nice name for this. So the chosen name will be Fort SA, which is one of my ballistics, so to say, brand. name is Quadrant, as a Quadrat, I mean, as a fun name, and it's actually Model 7 and an AA 50mm. Now comes the thing. The turret, as you can see here, has a diameter of 7. So I call this then T turret 7. So it is 7 diameter. And to know how tall it is inside the turret wall, well, that's the height we set, which we did bring out the ruler here again, and it is 9. So it's a T7x9, which is the elevation. Now we can save it, and inside of here you can see the cost of it. Very nice. Now we should be able to test the different ammunitions too, if we want to have an armor piercing head or a heavy head or whatever we want. And you may wonder, why does it cost a little bit more than it said it would cost when we saved it? And that's because this counts in the cost of the ammo, because when we spawn this turret, it's actually going to be preloaded. Well, I'm now going to test up to spawn the test equipment here. We're going to turn that off. And we are going to aim this turret this direction. Add another turret here. This one we're going to modify. Whoops. So I'm going to open up so we can see the ammo customizer. For this one, we are going to set it to be a armor piercing head. What did I change now? Nothing? Okay. We're going to set up this to be an armor piercing head instead, right? And it's going to have the same stats basically. So if we refill the APS shells, we're going to repair this one as well. And repair all. So you can see here that they have the same speed because they are having the same expected thing. You may also want to call it something else than whatever. But you can see the theoretical here. We have a kinetic damage of 350 and an AP value of 80. And for this one, we have a AP value of 50 and expected kinetic damage of 411. So about 50 more per shot. We're just going to config this little place. So we're going to set the aim down there, and this should be set at 9 since that is the elevation. And then we should basically fire. We're now firing. And you can clearly see that the one to the left with the armor piercing head gets through a good bit faster. But that is fraudulent results, because you'll see it's gonna be completely different when we turn around to the really anti-kinetic type of armor. So when you're seeing it here, you can see, bam, they're eating about the same speed through here. And we are firing and firing. And you can see now the right one with the sabot head got through a lot earlier. We're not even... We are like a good bit after here now. So that's kind of the difference. It depends what target you're shooting at. And the sabot head in all honor, but for maximum kinetic damage, I mean, we can change this to a heavy head instead. And if we do that, man, you're gonna see some results that are completely different. Here you can see we are now having a slower shell, so it's about 200 meters per second slower. And if you go in here and select, look at the shell, we're dealing about double the damage, but the AP value is only, well, 29, so that's not great. So if we shoot at this here, you can see it's shredding that pretty quickly. But when we're starting to hit the heavy armor, it's really lagging after. And when we're shooting at something like this, it's like these are already through. We are not through here at all. So that's kind of the little interesting trade-off. Here though, we have a pretty lightweight sheep armor, and you can see that the heavy heads shoot through a lot faster. So it's all about what target you're shooting at, basically. We are done with the turret, but I'm gonna show you some extra tips and tricks as well, because we want to be pretty detailed. I'm not really sure if we should call this tutorial a masterclass, or if we're gonna call it just detailed tutorial or beginner's tutorial. I don't know. I will actually put up on YouTube, test different types of names for the video, and we'll see which is gonna do best. But that will kind of decide for future long tutorials like this what the series is going to be called. I previously called them Ultimate Tutorial, but maybe we change it to Masterclass. Our awesome puppy, our captain, did suggest that, but earlier. Anyways, you can, as you may know, rail boost turrets and stuff like that. You can have rail boosted. So what you do is you go to the railgun and you add a railgun beside the firing piece, a railgun magnet, and then you have railgun barrel magnet. You only need one of them usually, and now it doesn't really matter how you want to set it up. It's just how much do you want to pay, because railgun is expensive. Each railgun charger costs 400. The more you have, the better it's gonna be. So let's say I want some 1, 2, 3. Let's say I want to have 6 of them. Very nice. And look at that. Now they're spinning around like this and it looks stupid. You can turn that off if you want to. So now you need to do some things. Now we're technically having a rail assisted gun. So you go to the railgun and you're gonna check allow railgun to fire while partially charged. And then you're gonna see what is your loading time. Your loading time is 0.2 seconds per shot. So you go down here and you drag this stat down until you get, let's see here, say like 0.2, like that. You can undershoot it a little bit to be sure that you won't have sputtering fire, but yeah, just like that. Now you have it a little bit boosted. So you can see we're now firing shells at 2,139 meters per second, and the railgun increases the speed of about the speed of a cram shell extra. And this is going to increase the damage, of course. If you check this this here, I don't know exactly how much energy we boosted it with, but it was about to get it to 200 and something. Now you can see the damage is suddenly 400, and the armor piercing value is 92. And if we drag it down, you can see it's a significant increase in boost. And by the way, whatever you set on the whatever shell here, it doesn't matter. These things, they don't matter. Only what you do over here at the shell editor actually matters for the gun. The part on the left is just basically to simulate about what it will be. When you do this, yes, you'll deal more damage. You'll have another problem though. That's that your recoil has suddenly gone up a good bit too. So to keep your accuracy, you also need to increase your amount of recoil, your recoil absorbers. So yeah, that's a bit annoying. Something that you should know, however, is that technically from a data standpoint of view, gunpowdered sandblasters are always more material efficient than railgun or rail boosted or pure railgun sandblasters. So you're not doing a better cannon by setting it up like this. And by the way, I didn't add enough railgun. I didn't add enough recoil absorbers for the railgun upgrade. You need to add so that your absorption is more units per second than your recoil is. It's just to show I added one. But When you're doing them rail boosted or pure railgun, they're gonna be less damage per second. You can see the left side of the gun here. They're going a good bit faster than the right side of the gun. You can see we're outspeeding our shells. So that's a little trick. You can also use this railgun system, for example, to add the accuracy buff. So now we have the same kind of stats. We have actually the same kind of recoil. We didn't increase the recoil. We're only using this railgun charge to make it more accurate. Now this is usually a waste of energy, but I mean, if we're firing this here, we're gonna be a lot more accurate at range. Well, I guess we can see some type of difference. It's gonna be a lot more accurate. They actually tell you how much more accurate it's gonna be. So this one is 0.15 degree. This one is 0.9 degree. So at this thing, it's gonna be a really bad idea to have multi-barrel, because that adds a little piece of inaccuracy. But for example, let's just ride with these shells here until the distance. You can see at this distance, we're like 5,000 meters away. We're still we're pretty much on point of the target, so they're gonna be uber accurate if you would have increased their accuracy using that method. And of course, I did say to you that it's usually a bit better with kinetics for this type of fast shell, this small caliber shell. But you can, of course, do a chemical shell. So just to show you side by side, if you do a fast, small chemical shell, we can do the popular HESH, for example. Really good for taking on enemy turrets. So then we have a HESH head and a high explosive warhead behind it. And they have, the HESH head have the same speed modifier as the armor piercing head. So that's great. If you look at this now, we'll have the same RPM. They should be, yeah, so the solid warhead bodies, which is, you know, what we removed from this. If you hover over the solid warhead body, you can see it has a speed modifier. The high explosive warhead doesn't have a speed modifier. So that's why basically this shell, the kinetics shell, goes faster than this shell. It's because of the solid warhead body speed modifier. But that's some different shenanigans you can look in detail for each the components. They may have modifiers. But let us shoot. We can actually do like this. So here we have the HESH, the high explosive squash head exploding on surface and spreading those little shrapnels around here. 50 millimeters is really a little bit little to shoot against anything really, and this sheep armor happens to have a spall liner, so it's actually, and it has a full air gap as well, so it actually happens to be really well set up against something like this. Of course, perhaps we should test it against this armor. So here you can see the HESH is immediately doing damage against this layer. But 50 millimeters is really not ideal for having a HESH system. It's really not ideal. You can use it, however, but I would suggest at least 100 millimeters, because realistically, if you shoot this at an enemy turret, even if you hit the turret head, you're gonna struggle with like dealing damage to the internal components at this tiny scale. Yeah. If you have to do kinetics, well, you're gonna turn yourself into a powder keg, but AP frag is a pretty solid thing. So I can just show you what happens if we bring some AP frag. And you can see it digs through pretty well, and especially now when we're digging through the armor layer here, we're starting to deal a lot more internal damage than the other shell will. You can see it's shooting through pretty hardcore here. Being like that, especially against something like much more squishy, it will just see, we're dealing damage all around them as well. So yeah, frag is awesome, but remember what happens when you dig frag. It's that's gonna happen, and your turret is gonna be pretty game over. That's basically, you can see, that's basically the entire turret. No, they were small enough to not chain react that much. Well, that's nice. Well, and with that, I want to say big thanks for watching. So a little bit of a long tutorial, but I hope I catched everything you'll need to know to make a multi-barrel fast-fire APS cannon with all its intricacies and things you should think about, basically. With that, I also want to say big thanks for everyone who's supporting the channel. Our Chancellor, Super Dave, at our own shop page. You can join the government of GMODISM. And we have the commissioned officers in the army of GMODISM, most notably Admiral Dragon X62, Commanders Ben, Welke, and Delphin, our lieutenants Ali, Anto, Gravy, Flars Dagon, Daniel Saikin, Owen, Powered by Greed, Vincent, Veritas, Volkai, Recoil, Scuba Rocks. Big thanks for supporting us every month, and of course to our cadets as well. Also, thanks to everyone in the Ecclesiarchy of GMODISM, your YouTube member supporters, and you get early access to some videos. With that said, this is your host Eric. See you next time, or signing out.